This is Fantology.
You may have heard of us.
Hello, contestants of the Uncrowned tournament, and welcome to another episode of Fantology. This is Ryan, joined by Josh, my cousin and one of my best friends, another member of the Fantology 5, and we are here to discuss Cradle Book 7, Uncrowned, and Cradle Book 8, Wintersteel. Now, I'm excited about this, specifically because I think Book 7 and 8 are probably two of my favorite books for Cradle. This book 7 maybe being my favorite. I mean, I haven't read book 12, obviously. Nobody has. Well, not nobody, but not us.
Oh,
Um,
have we reached out
so,
about that, by the way?
um, I don't know. So you mean like getting an ARC
Yeah,
copy? Is that what you're
yeah,
referring to?
yeah. Maybe this
Yeah,
is
I
a
don't.
behind the scenes conversation, but we probably could reach out at least.
Yeah, so as members of Fantology, sometimes we can get advanced reader copies of the books that are coming out. Like, for instance, right now, Josh read Night Angel Nemesis, the new book coming out by Brent Weeks, and he and Steven are going to be doing a review for that, as well as James Eilington's new book, The Will of the Many, which Steven and Ben have read or are reading.
Hmm.
Steven has really good things to say about that.
Really good
So,
things.
so fun things coming from Fantology. We do not have book 12, which is called Waybound by Will Wight. But who knows? Maybe we'll get that. That would be cool. We'll
Yeah, we
need to
can
look into that.
get a review up for you guys when it comes out, so that you can get that hype train up.
Yeah, hype train. Um, well, let's turn our vision back towards Cradle. Josh just finished book 8. Now, I finished these a few months ago, and my memories already started fading. I don't know if that's my old age or I'm just trying to cram too much fantasy in my brain at once, but that's the sad state of where we're at. So, Josh is going to be like the pro, and I'm going to be like the semi pro amateur who kind of remembers what happens.
Yeah, we can say that, but I don't know how pro I am. I feel like with these things generally, as you read more, like things in the past make more sense. If you know what I mean. Like I
Yeah.
look back to some of the things that happened in the first few books, and even though they've been longer, like it just makes more sense what happened, just because I've been in the world more. So I think that
Hmm.
you still have that advantage of me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I will. We'll see. We'll let the listeners decide at the end of this podcast. Um, let's go ahead and get started with a spoiler-free review, or just thoughts in general about these books. How do they compare to the books that came before to you, Josh?
I agree with you that I think that that these were some of the best books of the series. I think 7 being my favorite book of the series so far. 8 was good too. Actually, maybe I don't know. They were both really good. I think that this is the first time spoiler thoughts for my ratings. I think I would probably rate them both an 8 at least. They're both really good. Maybe as we talk about them, I'll give the win to one of them over the other. But I really enjoyed how fast paced they were. The characters, zooming in on like both Lyndon and Yaren a little bit more, but also getting an idea of the scope and what the plot is going to be moving forward. I think finally we're getting some progression towards some of the things that were promised at the very beginning of the series that we haven't really been able to see so far. So this is kind of just my vomit, like all my initial thoughts and what I thought of them. So
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I said earlier that I think book 7 might be my favorite out of the 11 released books. And it's I think the format of this book is really cool of book 7, and the whole Uncrowned King tournament is, I don't know, it just seems like you're now starting to realize like how far Lyndon has come, because he's training constantly out of his depth, still out of his depth here, but he's starting to catch up, I'd say. I mean, he's been selected to compete in this tournament, so obviously he's on some level equal to all the other contestants.
Yeah, and I think you start to see in some ways how, especially, he's been groomed for the last few years specifically so that he can be ahead of the other contestants in a lot of ways. And I think specifically, like, Yaren did a good job with that, but also, um, shoot, I'm blanking on his name.
Ethan?
Ethan, yeah. Jeez. Yeah, Ethan, like, you can really see Ethan's plan coming together for Lyndon, and like, um, all the way from him getting his iron body to him introducing the path of the black flame, giving him like the ability to cycle his Madra in like really efficient ways so that he can adopt these new techniques. You just see these things coming together that show how far Lyndon is ahead than a lot of people in the tournament.
Yeah. And the thing that I like about talking about Ethan is back in book, I think book 2 or book 3, he said he's looking for people to kind of, go to the end with him, right? Get to the end of the path. And we're starting to see that, like they are almost on the same level as Ethan because they're competing in the tournament with him. Whereas before he's always been like master and their apprentices. It's like now they're, or at least Ethan and Garen are teammates. So that's kind of cool. We're getting closer and closer to Ethan's goal.
Yeah, I do think that you see a little bit that Ethan is still pretty far ahead of him. Like, they're like, why haven't you gone to Underlord yet? Or wait, he was at Underlord, but why haven't you gone to Overlord yet? Right?
Yeah.
And he was kind of just doing it because he had a. Did he know that this tournament was going to be happening? I mean, it's kind of implied that he
Yeah,
did.
I'm sure Ethan knew it was coming up.
So he kept his status as Underlord, right? Just so that he could be competing in this tournament. Is kind of the implication I got. Did I misread that?
I can't remember, but that sounds like something Ethan would do. He's very calculated.
Yeah, because then he just like goes into a room and just like advances into Overlord just like that because he had been on the precipice, like, of kind of doing it whenever he wanted.
Yeah, so let's jump into spoilers for the book.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I guess I've been spoiling some things, but
Yeah, well, you're right. He's obviously been ready to advance to Overlord for a long time and does it with the blink of an eye. So there's no surprise there. Or I mean, I guess that's surprising for us, but not surprising for Ethan. Um, the other cool thing about this book, I say this in every review, but each book you kind of get further and further into the water. We're in the world of Cradle. We're submerging ourselves more into it. We're getting the scale, like, whereas now we're meeting and talking with monarchs much more regularly, and um, overlord, archlord, sages. Even the Abidan is coming in here, and they're involving themselves in this.
yeah, I think that it's really cool to see the power levels, like, um, and see how like you can really start to affect reality. One of the things that I've been kind of critical of in the past was kind of these different power levels and how you don't really see the differences in them because he just kind of levels up with his enemies. But now that we're getting to the point where like the next time he advances, he can just kind of change reality with like a thought and like just stop things from happening, stop people in their tracks. I don't know. Like, these things are the things that I'm really excited to see him start to develop.
You mean Ethan, or sorry, Lyndon can
Lyndon.
just kind of stop things in their tracks. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely at the point where he's stronger than the average Cradle inhabitant. Probably significantly stronger.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Um,
he's stronger than, it seems like he's stronger than almost anybody, right? Like, there's maybe only a handful of people that are stronger than him.
I mean, I think there's in Uncrowned, he's still. I think he's
Yeah, I guess. Sorry.
Archlords,
Yeah.
sages, monarchs are probably all stronger than he is.
Right. I guess I'm kind of combining like where he is at the ending of book 8, which I'm forgetting the name of.
Yeah.
But yeah, fair enough.
Wintersteel.
But, yeah.
Um, this book also gives us some more perspective on Yaren's beginnings. We see, um, or is that in Wintersteel, where we see her remembering, or we get a flashback of the sword sages like last moments at
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
the school,
Hmm.
the Heaven's Glory School. Is that what it is?
Yeah. Yeah, we do see that. And that, because that tied into her advancement to Overlord, right? Was that her purpose was not to be like him, but it's to be herself, whatever she's going to become. I think it was something like that. And so, yeah, we saw some of that memory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, it is pretty cool though, because you do start to see sages and monarchs, which again, I feel like these things have just been referenced in the past, but I didn't really understand them. But now that I'm like, okay, well, monarchs pretty much control everything that happens really on Cradle, for the
Hmm.
most part. Like they really only worry about when the Abaddon steps in, and there's 7 of them, right? So they really only care about what each other think, and they kind of just play politics with the rest of Cradle. And then you get the sages, which are like definitely a pretty big step below the monarchs in a lot of ways, but they're still super powerful, and like you don't want to mess with them.
And the heralds, yeah, sages and
Oh yeah,
heralds. They're
the
kind of
hair.
like different, but still on the same level.
Yeah, that's kind of one thing that kind of confused me was the difference between sages and heralds, and what. Yeah, that's still a little bit murky for me.
So, if I can remember it, sages have manifested an icon,
Mm,
so their connection to the way is a bit stronger. Whereas heralds, I, I don't know. I think they've like advanced in power level. I don't remember exactly, but I do know that Yeren is a sage, whereas or she's becoming a sage as she's manifesting the sword icon. Whereas somebody like um, Fury is a herald who's very powerful. Um, so I don't know. Their power is kind of in different forms.
yeah. It says so. Sage. This is from the Abaddon archives. Sage often attained at the peak of Archlord, but not solely limited to Archlords, capable of affecting the physical world through the use of their authority. With the workings of willpower, they're able to affect reality. Also able to bend physical laws through sheer willpower, given the task to be carried out is within the domain of the icon which the sacred artist manifested. A large leap in spiritual strength achieved by manifesting an icon, touching the way. Aging fully stops, capable of ascending. Yeah, versus Herald, often attained at the peak of Archlord, but not solely limited to Archlords. It occurs when sacred artists merge their body and their spirit into clash of wills with their remnant. Advancement to Herald gives total control over one's body, which leads to possession of more than physical feats like superior strength and spiritual perception, pressure, rapid regeneration, better aura management, control, aging fully stops, capable of ascending. Okay, so it seems like Herald is more like a physical thing, whereas Sage is more of like a spiritual thing, right?
Yeah, authority. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, can you be a Sage and a Herald, or do you like pick one of the two?
Well, that's a monarch.
Oh, Monarch is a Sage. Oh yeah, achieved by
Yeah.
advancing to both Herald and Sage. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. That thanks. I that helps me. That's gonna help me moving forward. I feel like.
Good. Um, I wanted to talk a bit about the structure of the tournament. What do you think about that?
So my thought about this, and I haven't watched a ton of anime or read a ton of anime or manga, but this is to me when it kind of starts to feel like that, of like having multiple volumes take place over the course of like one tournament, whereas I feel like this might just be a few chapters in like a typical book series. This, I kind of like seeing it really drawn out into multiple books, because I think it does give you a little bit more time to really build up the intensity of it and also build up the emotions from Lyndon and Yaren and Ethan. So that's all to say that I liked it. It really worked for me, obviously, with me giving these such high ratings. I think it is a culmination of everything that Lyndon has worked for, is given clear, not prizes, not like the prize isn't that big of a deal, but you see how doing well in the tournament for these three people can really affect the outcomes of what they want in the whole world. I feel like if you're just to tell me like, oh, there's going to be 2.5 books that just cover like a tournament of something, I'd be like, oh, that's going to probably be really boring, because it wouldn't, like, there's only so much that tournament can do. But for me, this is like, it really does a good job of showing how this is going to affect the rest of the series and how they can really learn and grow and make their purposes manifested within this tournament. I've been thinking about that a lot, so that's kind of why that answer was a little bit long. But
yeah, I was just gonna say something super basic, like it reminded me of like a fusion of like maybe Hunger Games and Squid Game, the TV show. But the stakes aren't. I mean, the stakes are very high, I guess, especially when they introduce the little, is it penance? The
yeah,
triangle that can kill like one person. I guess the stakes are high there. Um, but they're not dying in the tournament, so it's not like if you get killed in the tournament, you just die
which
in
I
real
kind of
life.
liked because in some ways, like, just dying is kind of low stakes, because it's like, well, they just die, but the rest of the world goes on. But now it's like taking away the stake of dying, so they can put like everything on the line. They can really show everything they have with still like
Yeah.
having stakes to it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like Lyndon, I think, would throw away his life in an instant if it was going to achieve what his goals are. But this is kind of taking away like the ability for him to just throw away his life, because like you can just die and come back. Anyway, so I liked it. I thought it was cool. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that brings us to the um, kind of the peak of the tournament, at least for Lyndon, which is where, curtain rises and he realizes he's facing off against Yaren, and it's either him or her being advancing. And it's interesting because at first he's thinking like, I don't want to hurt Yaren. I don't want to mess up her chances. And like by doing that, he was upsetting her because like he wouldn't give her his best.
I really liked how they did that. How you could really kind of feel that these were two people that really wanted to just give all of themselves to each other, if that makes sense. And when I say that, that seems like kind of like a romantic thing, which this is developing, like the romance is developing, but it's like in some ways more than that, because they have to respect each other enough that they are going to do everything they can to help each other advance. And in this case, it means like one of them is going to have their heart broken in some ways.
Yeah. And one of them only one can advance. And I think I was expecting Lyndon to win the tournament, or at least get like runner up. I wasn't expecting him to get knocked out this early into Yaren. That was surprising.
Yeah, I want to go back and listen to our last conversation, because I know you had asked me if I thought Lyndon was going to win. Do you remember what I said? I can't remember what I said.
I can't remember what you said either.
Oh, shoot.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, because I want to know what prediction I made, but it's fine. We don't have to go back and look.
I think you predicted Lyndon would win.
I probably did, but I think I said something like, I hope he doesn't win, because I feel like he's just won everything he's done so far.
Yeah. I think you said like you couldn't see him not winning.
Yeah, because he's won everything he's done so far. But I think that this is definitely the way that it should go down. The only thing is, would anything have been different if Lyndon would have won? You know, like it still seems like he would still have used penance to like kill that monarch guy that was gonna go kill everyone, right?
Yeah. Sesheth Kuna or Reagan Shen.
Yeah.
I mean, Linda or Yaren used penance to kill Sesheth Kunaz, but do you think Lyndon would have done the same?
Was there an option to kill the Dread God? Was that one of the options? I can't remember.
Um,
I don't think it was,
I'm not sure.
but I could have seen Lyndon trying to kill the Dread God,
Huh,
which
that's
admittedly
a
would have
good
been pretty
point.
cool.
All right, so let's unless you want to talk about anything else on in the Uncrowned tournament, or at least Uncrowned, the book, um, we should maybe move on to Wintersteel,
Yep, let's
which
do it.
is it's kind of like starts off with like an intermission, I would say, of the tournament where um these people go to train with different sages. Am I
Mm-hmm.
remembering that correctly, or was this before?
Yeah, they get some gifts, I think, and they get to train with the sages. Or maybe there was one other like thing because I think that was just the top four. Maybe it was the top eight. But yeah, and Lyndon is given a little communication device that he can use to talk to Ethan and Yaren.
No, that's at the beginning. Charity gives that to Lyndon.
Yeah, yep, at the beginning of the book, right?
Yeah, so remember the part where Yaren. Oh yeah, so
Yeah,
Yaren goes with the Winter Sage to train with her, and at the same time, Lyndon goes with he goes out to like that battlefield or with Akura Fury where they're kind of battling it out with the Colts, right?
yeah, yeah, and he starts just draining people of Madra because he can use their Madra to help him advance.
Yeah, so he's working on his consume skill, which is kind of it's just kind of scary, honestly, like
Yeah,
consuming power from people to power himself.
I kind of.
Um,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
and he gets like hyper focused on like earning points. That's kind of like a meme is like how focused Lyndon gets on. It's like I gotta earn more points. I gotta get this.
Yeah, I kind of like how Lyndon is given like what's typically kind of bad guy powers, if that makes sense. Like consuming
Yeah,
people's Madra, the
the
path
black
of the black
flame.
flame, like his eyes are just black. Like I kind of like how
Yeah,
traditionally these are associated with like evil or vampires or whatever, but Lyndon is just like
yeah.
a super nice guy but has all these scary powers.
I mean, it is funny because a lot of people will like describe Lyndon like when he like gets his like black eyes, he just like becomes this like terrifying monster to them. And when he doesn't have that, he's just kind of like a normal like a normal boy or teen, and it's like hard to reconcile like these. It's like almost two different people.
Yeah. And but that's what makes it cool because you get to follow Aaron a little or Lyndon a little bit, and you see him growing from this like boy who can't like literally do anything, and now is like just everybody's cowering in front of him.
Yeah, yeah, that is fun. That's the progression that the progression is so strong in this series that I mean that's a lot of the fun of reading it. I don't want to call it progression fantasy, I think, because we've had people say that it's not. It's more like or no, it is progression
It's
fantasy.
not lit
Sorry.
RPG.
It's
Yeah.
not lit RPG. I got those confused. Um so the other thing I really like about Winter Steel is we start to learn a lot more about Yaren's blood shadow. at first that her blood shadow is a monster. Like it killed her family when she was younger, and but now it's kind of like taken on characteristics of Yaren and almost became like a mirror of herself,
Mm-hmm.
slightly different. And I think it also I think reveals like Yaren's feelings for Lyndon as well, because the Blood Shadow leaves to go be with Lyndon for a while.
Yeah, that was kind of awkward. Like Lyndon goes on a date kind of with
Yeah,
her blood shadow. But yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like a less guarded uh, Yaren in some ways.
yeah, absolutely. Um, so I thought that was cool, and um, I don't know. I did like that aspect where it's like, Yaren is out of the picture and suddenly we see what does he call the Blood Shadow? The Blood Shadow
Ruby.
has a name. Ruby, yeah. So he like gets to know Ruby and Ruby's kind of like, "Hey, Lyndon, want to be my girlfriend?" And Lyndon's like, "Well, you're like Yaren, but not." And
Yeah, I think she asked if I think that they're about to like kiss or something, but he's like,
yeah,
can't, you're not Yaren. That'd be really weird,
yeah.
man.
It was sad at the same point because you're like, "Oh, poor Ruby."
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of weird. It's just kind of a whole weird situation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so this leads me into one thing I kind of wanted to say. I wish that maybe it was a little bit better. Is I feel like there's some emotion kind of lacking in terms of like relationships in general. Like I feel like I can, as a reader, put that emotion in there. Like, oh man, these characters have spent a lot of time together. I've been shipping them for a long time, and like this is kind of coming together. But I don't really see that on the page that much. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think Will Wight is similar to Brandon Sanderson in the sense that he's kind of good at building a lot of things around relationships, but not like the passion of the relationship itself.
Yeah. The thing I think Brandon Sanderson tries to do that a little bit more though. Like I do agree that that's
Yeah.
definitely not one of his super strong suits, but I feel like there's not really even that many scenes or like conversations where like I'm seeing emotion being poured out from the characters.
Yeah. It's clear that they care for each other, but they don't like express it very well and yeah, I mean at some point it's like is it the characters or is it like the author struggling to express it through them?
Yeah, and again, like I think it's a decision. I don't know if I'd say that the author is really struggling because I think I would say if he's struggling is if he's writing these scenes and they're just not landing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I just say it's not really a focus of this series, and I kind of wish it, not like a focus, but I just wish that we got a little bit more scenes of emotion from the characters.
yeah, yeah. I think I agree with that.
Um,
I'm trying to remember in future books, um, but obviously I'm not going to talk about that now.
yeah.
Um, is there anything else? I mean, so I have other points, but it's kind of towards the end of the book. So were there any other like and throughout the middle of the book before we get to the climax parts of Winter Steel that you wanted to talk about? It's kind
Yeah, I think that Yaren kind of or Lyndon kind of gathering those points felt a little bit sluggish at times. Like he had the team that he
yeah,
had put together, which is fun, but if that doesn't move forward into the rest of the books, then it kind of feels a little bit pointless. If I'm to make a bad pun on about the book, but like I don't know. I think it would be cool if he developed this team and then like he took this team into the rest of the series a little bit, but it doesn't seem like that's really going to happen.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's kind of the only other
Um,
thing before the end of the book.
okay, that's fair. Um, So what I wanted to talk about, I can't get it out of my head. Well, first let's go back to Ethan,
Hmm.
because I think it was surprising how quickly he beat Shah Miara, who was this, a monarch in disguise. Which, I mean, I guess it didn't like fully make sense because all of the like monarch abilities and memories are passed down to Shah Miara from her mother, right? So how did she like? I don't know.
How
How did she
how was she
lose?
able to compete?
Well, I mean, I know that she kind of like tricked her way into it, or she wouldn't she wouldn't perform at a higher level than Overlord or Archlord, but I mean, even without the power, you'd think that a monarch could still be able to like outmaneuver
You'd think, yeah.
Ethan.
I think it just goes to show that Ethan really was probably a lot closer to like being a monarch than he was really even to being an underlord.
Yeah.
Like, or at least uh, he's like definitely the top. He would have been at like the top of the archlord,
Mm-hmm.
but he was just kind of
Okay.
keeping himself at the underlord status.
All right. Well, he obviously was so impressive that they bribed him into throwing his next match.
Hmm.
That was so surprising to me that he took the bribe. I was like, "What?"
Well, I think to me, he was confident enough that Yaren was going to win and do the same things he would have done. You know what I mean? That he saw an opportunity
Yeah.
for him to get things that he wouldn't be able to get otherwise.
Yeah. That is a really good point. I don't know if I was Ethan, I don't know if I could have had that same confidence. Well, that's why he's the powerful secret artist that he is, and I'm not.
And I think to me it's implied that there's some sort of like knowledge that Ethan has of the future because I don't know, he has that like sense, like that like bloodline sense, right?
Yeah.
And I know that that doesn't necessarily respond to, or like extend into knowledge of future events, but it just seems like he has to in some ways.
Hmm. Yeah. I think that is maybe a good point. Might come up in later books.
Fair enough.
I'm saying that a lot to you this episode, John. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Um,
Um, yeah, so I want to get back to now that we've talked a little bit about Ethan. Um, so there's the showdown between Sofara and Yaren, right?
so far,
And
a showdown
Yaren,
between, yeah, this is the big one at the end of the book where Yaren kind of gets her butt handed to her for a few different rounds, right?
uh-huh,
Yeah.
and then comes back to win it all.
So how is Safana so far advanced?
Well, I think that they had kind of like forced her like to advance past like her spiritual, like what her spirit could handle.
Hmm.
So like even though she was so far advanced and like so powerful, it ended up like ultimately being her downfall.
But that's kind of only because Yaren had kind of extended into being a sage already, though, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Because okay, so yeah, I need to think about what happened. So Yaren like fully bonds with her,
Ruby.
um, with Ruby, right? And so that's not necessarily her remnant that she's bonding, which is what she would have to do if she was going to become a monarch, right?
Hmm.
But it did give her like some powers of a monarch. Am I thinking about this right?
I mean, yeah, I guess if you think of like a monarch like having authority.
Or maybe not monarch, but a herald.
A sage.
A sage, yeah. Well, I thought the sage was bonding, was manifesting her sign, not her sign, but her.
Oh yeah, so I've been wrong this whole time. I've been saying that Yaren is like almost a sage, but you're right. She's like a herald, but not quite a herald, right? Because
And I think that's why, because she was always trying to become a sage, but she needed to realize that she needed to be like progress towards becoming a herald because bonding with Ruby would allow her to do a lot of that, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
hmm
I'm sure
but
we'll.
she's not yet an archlord, right? And
Right,
typically it's archlords, so she isn't quite high enough level to be like your normal herald.
but she got like some herald powers, which is why she could just kind of like usually destroy what's her face,
Sofara,
Safara. Yeah,
Sofarinatoth. Man, dragons have like long names. Sofarinatoth, Sesheth Kunaz. Just
nice.
saying. That's long, difficult names to pronounce.
But yeah, that was another one where I was on the edge of my seat for a while. Like I did know if she would fail. I didn't think she would, but like yeah, after those first two rounds, I'm like, well, I don't know how she's coming back from that. I think that was a really well paced, like an
Hmm
intriguing fight that Will Wight set up.
And so at the end of that, the fact that Yaren won kind of set off this whole like conflict because suddenly they realized Yaren was going to come into possession of this powerful weapon and she could kill anybody she wanted to, essentially. And
I
it
like
set
how
off this
she
war.
I like how she just used it too, because there's all that talk of like, well, it's not just the ability to kill someone, but it's everybody else knowing that they have
Yeah,
that ability too.
hmm that's true. She just was like, yep, you're dying. Um, and then, I mean, they kind of seem like everybody's on the back foot, right? Like it's so far it just seems like too powerful. Like how can Yaren beat her? And then the Akura clan is just losing to the cultists and the dragons, and then all of a sudden, Akura Fury's like, "Hey, you know what? I'm actually a monarch now too."
Yeah,
So
that was pretty crazy.
he kind of pulled the trick out of Ethan's book and was like, "I've been ready to advance for a while."
Yeah. The one thing I kind of wish I will say is that I kind of wish that you would have been introduced to these characters a little bit longer so that these things would have been more impactful. But small
Which
little.
characters do you mean?
Some of the other contestants in the tournament, maybe like just kind of all the side characters that we've been talking about so far.
Yeah, I mean, you're learning a little bit more about them, like or this like a select few. These books are already. I feel like it's hard enough to if you start taking more time away from Lyndon, Aaron, Ethan, then it's going to be hard to like fully develop them or
Yeah,
flesh it out enough,
you're
flesh
right.
out their story enough.
I think maybe just having again like these conversations, it seems like we have so much character development just on a battlefield, whereas I feel like if they just even went out to like a party with the other contestants and you just like got to know them a little bit, that might go a pretty long way towards you actually caring about them, or really, really hoping that they get defeated because you hate them so much. Just something, that so that they're not just another
Hmm
face that Lyndon or Yaren has to get through.
I mean, so far we kind of like understood her a bit with Lyndon killing her sister,
True, yeah.
but I mean, probably not as much as you might want. She also wasn't it Safara who killed the that other like adherent of the Path of Black Flame who went crazy, and Lyndon had kind of like brought him back, and then Safara just killed him at the end.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That was back in Uncrowned. So that was another like kind of despicable thing that Safar had done.
Yeah, I don't know. I think after we talked about it, I think I agree with you. I think I like book 7 a little bit more than book 8. Although I think that Yaren winning the tournament is definitely going to be a high point of the series. But I think as a whole, yeah, I think I might bump book 7 up to an 8.5. Book 8 sitting at an 8.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I just thought it was great. It was action packed. It didn't have like a lot of Lyndon just like meditating
Mm-hmm.
or like channeling mantra. There was like action, 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 and there's a lot of like unexpected developments. Um, I guess we still see Lyndon, Yaren, Ethan like in the top, and I mean we haven't really talked much about Mercy, but she's there. She's doing work. She almost beats Safar herself, right?
Yeah, she does.
And
That was kind of sad that she kind of, you know, Charity kind of came in and laid into her a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah. You start to really like these characters too. Like Mercy, I especially like.
yeah. I was wondering if there was gonna be a love triangle between like Mercy and Lyndon because there's been like a few hints.
Well,
You're
she
like,
was there trying to marry him off to her, right? At
yeah.
one point.
I
Yeah.
guess it's not in book 8. It's pretty overt when they talk about it. But Mercy is like very aware of Lyndon and Yaren's relationship and like, hey, we're friends. You got Yaren.
I'm kind of thinking Mercy and Nathan. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Mm, okay.
But again, it doesn't seem like romance is a really big part of the series, so I probably
I
shouldn't get
thought
my hopes up too much.
I thought Ethan might have a thing with Naru Seiya, the other member of his team.
Oh yeah. I guess I
But
never
you're right.
really picked up on that chemistry.
You're right. It's maybe not the top reason to read these books is romance.
Yeah. It's definitely not Court of Thorns and Roses or
But I think the relationships are good.
the relationships are good. And the characters are good. And so you enjoy seeing them interact with each other. There's just not a ton of emotion.
Yeah. Um, and I guess the last thing I don't think we talked about this at all in the last review was the conflict between like the greater conflict with the Abaddon and the Froshir and the fact that um the Mad King has now stolen like kind of a prototype attempt at Osriel's scythe or razor, which
Something
I
like
think
that.
it's his scythe. His scythe. So they're like a lot more threatening to the Abaddon.
Honestly, I don't know what's going on too much with that story. I kind of wish I was more involved. I kind of hope that somebody's gone through and like put together just all those scenes so I could just kind of go through and read them. Kind of like what people do with Sanderson's like pre-header chapters. They put them all together so that you can just go read them.
Oh yeah.
I think that would be a good resource.
Well, I will say that it becomes. I mean, they're they're introducing it more and more. Like the Abaddon and the world and the inhabitants are interacting more and more. So I think it's. I mean, I know it's going to be more important than later books. So I'm advising you to maybe pay more attention.
I need to. This sounds bad, but I kind of the books always end on kind of a cliffhanger, and so I just kind of want to get into the plot of like what happened in the last book, like what are they doing now, what's going to happen. I just kind of want
Yeah.
to get into that. So when I have to sit through a storyline that isn't too compelling for me at this point, it's kind of like just let's get through it.
All right. Well, you read how you want to read.
I don't know. I mean, that might be a hot take, but that's where I'm at.
I enjoyed it.
It feels like something that I would enjoy on paper, but isn't working for me as much as I wish it would. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah. I'm not going to say you're wrong, but I disagree with you.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you wanted to bring up before we wrap up this episode, Josh?
Nope. Just I think that you kept kind of hinting that these two books would be kind of a turning point for the series, and I feel like it fulfilled that. I think that you gave me some good advice. I wasn't like thinking about giving up or anything, but I think that this is going to give me the oomph that I need to like for sure be caught up by the time book 12 comes out.
Yeah, it kicks things into high gear. That's
does.
for sure.
I will say it's kind of funny because I am right now for Fantology, we are doing Legends and Lattes as our book club book, which is written by Travis Baldry. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah, Travis Baldry.
And so he is the narrator from Cradle, and he is also narrating his own book, Legends and Lattes, which you can really get two different types of books, but they're written just close enough in style, like without super flowery prose, that like, because it's him reading it and he does pretty much the same voice, I'm always like, wait, I'm not listening to Cradle right now. I'm listening to Legends and Lattes. It's just kind of funny.
It's funny. I've heard good things about Legends and Lattes, but I have not read it myself.
Yeah, so I'm about a third of the way through it. Pretty chill, just stakes are low. You're sitting with an orc as she establishes a coffee shop in the middle of like a traditional D&D town. So it's kind of like after the adventurer has done their adventuring, they go settle down and set up a coffee shop. It's kind of fun.
Cool. Well, I would just like to say that, I mean, you've talked about your ratings about these two books. You said maybe like an 8.5 for book 7, Uncrowned, and like an 8 for Wintersteel. Is that what you're?
I think that's what I'm sitting at. Yeah.
So I would probably give book 7 a 9 out of 10. I really liked it. Like I said, probably my favorite book that's released so far for Cradle, and I'd probably give book 8 an 8 out of 10. It
Nice.
had a lot of cool moments, but it was maybe not quite as focused as I would have liked. I think the break before we got back to the tournament dragged on a little bit more than I wanted.
Yeah, I agree.
I was just interested in, figuring out what would happen. And so, I don't know, it seemed almost like a long time, from when we got to get the resolution of the tournament from when we finished book 7.
I agree.
So, but that being said, I still enjoyed it quite a bit. I want to give a shout out to, I believe their name is Kukri, Kukri. This is somebody who joined our Discord and has given us some good feedback on our episodes and on specifically our Cradle episodes. And I love that as a content creator, as a podcaster, when people come talk to us. So if you're listening to this and you want to come join our Discord, then that would be awesome. We would love to chat with you about it, hear what you have to say. Yeah, until next time, this is Fantology. Thanks for joining us, Josh. Joining me.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yep. Talk to you next time.